Mark Twain came into this world with Halley's Comet. I came in with television. TV and I came into focus at about the same time. The first set I ever saw was in Brooklyn. It was as big as a chest of drawers. It had a screen the size of a goldfish bowl from Woolworth's. It was ground to about the same specifications. My father held me up to see the future. Shadowy gray figures moved across the shadowy gray landscape. I quickly grew bored with the future.
It's howdy-doody time. It's howdy-doody time. Bob Smith and Howdy too. Say howdy-doody.
In the early 1950s, there was nothing on daytime television. I'm not saying there was nothing worth watching. There was nothing at all, unless you want to count the test pattern. The unfortunate kid who stayed home sick back then faced a landscape empty and arid, until 4 o'clock, when Howdy Doody came on the horizon. Howdy and Buffalo Bob Smith reigned over Doodyville. Howdy was a freckle-faced marionette with exactly 48 freckles, one for every state in the Union. I think the freckles were the educational part of the program. Buffalo Bob was a real person, and he really cared for us. The first thing he would say was, "Now boys and girls, sit 6 feet back from the screen." Despite the fact that the picture tube was gray from the amount of lead in the glass, radiation was still an issue. Bob Keyshawn played Clarabelle, the clown on the show. He never spoke but communicated with bulb horns. He also carried a seltzer bottle. That never failed to get a laugh out of me. But I've always been a pie-in-the-face kind of guy. Buffalo Bob owned the rights to the show, and when it went into syndication, it turned into a gold mine. Keyshawn wanted a piece of the action. He organized some of the other characters, J. Corny Cobb, Mr. Bluster, Chief Thunderthud, and Flubadub, into a union. But the clown was no Jimmy Hoffa. He overplayed his hand. After all, he was mute, in full makeup, with a bulb nose. Clarabelle was quietly replaced. Keyshawn went on to play Captain Kangaroo, but I never warmed to that character. By the mid-1950s, television had solidified into the form it would hold for the next 50 years. Soap operas laid claim to daytime television. God owned Sunday morning, but Saturday morning was ours. Beanie and Cecil were clever, as was Crusader Rabbit. Pink Panther, Clutch Cargo, overrated. Astro Boy, greatly underrated. And Gumby? Well, who couldn't love Gumby? Pinky Lee was lame. I don't want to sound unkind, but there's little else that can be said here. Watching Pinky's stale vaudeville frolics was like watching a dog eat peanut butter. Amusing for a short while, but guaranteed you will get tired of the exercise long before the dog. And then one day Pinky wasn't there. A rumor went around that Pinky had died on live television. I was not surprised. I'd watch Pinky die on live television every week. We never missed the Mickey Mouse Club. I didn't really like it at first, but I grew into it. At one time, everything I knew about the opposite sex came from the Sears Roebuck women's underwear ads and Annette and Doreen, the Mouseketeers. Diver Dan had his limitations. Frank Freda, the actor who played Dan, was dressed in a diving outfit with lead boots and a metal helmet. The fish he encountered were marionettes. The underwater effects were achieved by filming the whole thing through an aquarium. Dan moved across the ocean floor about as fast as a sea cucumber. He set the pace for the show. With his features obscured by the helmet and his voice muffled, Dan couldn't have been happy with the direction his career path was taking. But he learned a lesson from Clarabelle. He didn't ask for creative control or a bigger slice of the action. Some of the shows intended for kids were strange, but for downright creepy, you couldn't beat Andy's Gang. It featured gap-toothed character actor Andy Devine in a last-ditch attempt to stay in show business. The other living characters were Squeaky the Mouse and Midnight the Cat. The animals were real, but they looked like they were pumped full of Thorazine. They played little tiny musical instruments while Andy sang. Andy was able to hold the whole show together, and it had its moments, but he really needed to have a long talk with his agent.
Gang, today Midnight and Squeaky are going to play 3 blind mice for us.
Mice?
Go ahead, Midnight. Come on, Midnight, let's get started. 3, come on, the next one. Blind, now the next one. Mice, up there. See how, that's it. They run. Now, Squeaky, you play the fast part. Come on. They all took after the farmer's wife. She cut off their tails with a carving knife.
Winky Dink and You was light years ahead of its time. The character was simplistic, the plot even more so. But in 1953, it was the dawn of interactive television. Viewers were encouraged to send in money and get the official Winky Dink kit. A magic screen, basically a piece of high-grade saran wrap, magic crayons, and a magic cloth. You held the magic screen up against your own television and rubbed it with the magic cloth. Static electricity held it in place. That was the magic part. A typical episode would go something like this. Winky, pursued by whatever, would come to a canyon or a river. Time would be held suspended, while Winky's fate hung in the balance. Viewers at home with the magic screen and crayons would draw a bridge. Winky would cross to safety. The screen and crayon kit cost 50 cents. I don't know what that would be in today's money, but it was above my pay grade. And still, I didn't want to let the Dinkster down. I know I'm not the only one who drew right on their own television screen with hardcore Crayolas, but I was the only one my father caught. Westerns were the backbone of my Saturday morning. The skies were not cloudy, and neither were the issues. Good and evil went toe-to-toe every week. Good never lost. Roy and Dale, Tonto and the Lone Ranger, Pancho and Cisco. You could slow them down, but you couldn't stop them. Gunplay was common, but for the most part, bullets ricocheted harmlessly off of boulders. Injuries were few. From time to time, someone would get a flesh wound, almost always to the upper arm. Occasionally, an extra would grab his stomach and pitch slowly forward, as if he'd eaten a bad bowl of chili. But no one ever died. Another popular setting was the jungle. Abbott and Costello would occasionally wander in. Tarzan and Jungle Jim, as his name would suggest, never got out. One thing every visitor to the jungle was sure to encounter was quicksand. It was often draped over by heavy rescue vines, but it could be deadly. We saw it so often that I thought quicksand would play a very important part in my life. So far it hasn't. Our television sets were primitive, and we huddled around them like little Neanderthals around the fire. Reception was iffy. Weather, sunspots, climate, they all could affect it. A pilot talking on his radio at 5,000 feet could make Minnie Mouse sound like Chuck Yeager. If anyone on the block turned on their vacuum cleaner, the picture scrambled beyond recognition. But we stuck to our posts. Nothing could deter us, not even quicksand.
Happy Trails.